are back, baby. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Potted Plant Entertainment. My name is Chris, and in case you don't know, I review movies. Yes, well, that's what we do here, and I rate them on a scale of 0 to 100 in increments of 5. I have not said that in a long time, almost a year. Yeah, this is my first review since I think It's a Wonderful Life last December. It's been a hot minute, but welcome back to the channel, everyone. I know your boy's been slacking this year, okay? But truth be told, my life is just a lot different now. I talked about this in my last video. Go check that out if you didn't see it. But I'm back now. I'm doing another review. Yay! It's time for Chris's reviews. Chris reviews stuff. Huzzah! Yes, everybody rejoice. The world is right again. So, this is something I have not talked about in depth on this channel before. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the original Star Trek series. Now, before this year, I've never been the biggest Star Trek fan. I've always really enjoyed the J.J. Abrams prequel trilogy. I reviewed all those during the pandemic. And outside of that, I haven't really had much of a connection with Star Trek. I remember growing up, my dad used to watch it every now and then. And I remember I tried to watch it with him a little bit, but I thought it was just boring. I didn't think there was enough action in it. But then again, when I was a kid, I also thought Rocky was boring because I felt like he didn't fight people enough. So, you know, people grow, right? So this year, sometime during the winter, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch Star Trek and really give this a fair shot. Just something came over me and I was like, I need to watch Star Trek. So I bought this. I bought the original Star Trek series on remastered DVD and I freaking loved it. I watched every single episode. I watched the first 6 movies. And right now I'm currently watching Star Trek Next Generation. Really enjoying that, but I gotta say I'm more of an original series guy myself. I even got this shirt. And to say that I have become a major Star Trek fan since I started watching that show is an understatement. The amount of Star Trek stuff I own now is utterly insane. I got a big Star Trek action figure collection now. I got these cardboard standees. I'll put a picture somewhere here. I got posters and stuff. I have gotten cups. I've got a lot of Star Trek stuff now. I bought so much of it. I have become a major Trekkie throughout 2024. And I'm never going to turn back because I absolutely freaking love it. I love Star Trek. It's awesome. I understand now why it's such a big deal. And it's crazy to think I've seen William Shatner before in person. And I also saw Chekhov in person once. I got within 20 feet of him. I got a picture. I'll try and put my picture here. I took of Shatner from a distance. I don't have any pictures of Chekhov though. But yeah, I love this show. This is often regarded as one of the best shows ever made. And when I finally really gave it a chance, it became clear to me why. So let's talk about Star Trek. So Star Trek first premiered in 1966 and it ended its run in 1969. This is a really old show. It's really old. It's amazing that anybody from the show is still alive, because a lot of them aren't. But it started in 1966 and ended its run in 1969. It was created by Gene Roddenberry, rest in peace. And this show came at a time where space was starting to get really big because of the space race, right? Once America went to space and the moon landing happened after, we went to the moon and all that, Westerns were really big before that. This is around the time when space stuff was starting to get really big. And it's amazing that the show ended early. The show was supposed to run for 5 seasons because when you watch the show, and in the intro of every episode, William Shatner says, he talks about the Enterprise and he says her 5-year mission. Well, every season was supposed to be 1 year of that mission. Well, it ended after 3. And then when you watch Star Trek The Motion Picture, they talk about how they went on this 5-year mission. So you're led to believe they finished the mission, but you just didn't get to see it. There was a lot of backlash. I guess the network, I think it was CBS, that when they canceled Star Trek, there was like protests outside their studios and stuff. They ended it because the ratings were low, which is surprising because this was at a time when space stuff was huge. So I don't really get that. But then we finally, like 10 years later, got Star Trek. Yeah, actually it was. It was 10 years later, we got Star Trek The Motion Picture. And the reason we got Star Trek The Motion Picture was because of Star Wars. For those of you who don't know, Star Wars rescued Star Trek. When Star Wars came out and it was a major hit, the studio looked at Star Trek and they're like, hey, people like this, right? And they were gonna bring it back for another show, but they were like, but Star Wars was a huge movie. Let's do a Star Trek movie and see if we can compete. And thus we got Star Trek The Motion Picture, which was kind of a letdown, but then we got Wrath of Khan, that was really good, and then we got several other movies after that. So, thanks to Star Wars, we got Star Trek. And even Leonard Nimoy himself, the man who played Spock, said that when he saw that Star Wars was such a big hit, he said to his wife, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a call to play Spock again. And like 2 weeks later, he got a call to play Spock again. So, pretty cool. But before Star Wars, there was Star Trek. Let's talk about my pros and cons for Star Trek. So for one thing, the cultural impact that this show has had is enormous. This show has been parodied and parodied and parodied. It has inspired so many other things. I'm pretty sure Star Trek was a big part of the inspiration for Star Wars. I mean, even the flip phone. Yeah, for those of you who were born yesterday, when I was a little kid, we had these things called flip phones. It was a phone that you opened like this. It was called a flip phone. Those were modeled after Captain Kirk's communicator. So that's how much of an impact Star Trek has had. We actually had technology was pushed into the future by this show. That's crazy to think about. The writing for the show is fantastic. The writing and directing both are fantastic. Even though a lot of the show doesn't really hold up anymore because it was the 60s, the writing and the directing made this show, plus the characters. These episodes were so thought-provoking, and a lot of them were centered around social issues. The show touches on race a lot, but it does these things in a way where it doesn't feel woke. Like nowadays, the art of subtlety in social issues in film is really lost, but Star Trek nailed it. They were able to present these issues like race, like the Vietnam War, like other, whatever else they talked about. They were able to present it in a way where it didn't feel like they were trying to cram a message down your throat and put entertainment second to the social issue. Because that's what it feels like a lot nowadays. It feels like the social issue is more important to the actual entertainment. Well, they put entertainment before the social issue, and it was subtle but effective, and it really worked. I mean, even like something as simple as just Lieutenant Uhura. They put her in a position of command. That's a black woman in a position of authority. That was big in 1966. I mean, that was before interracial marriage had been legalized at the federal level. That didn't happen until 69. So that was a big deal. There's another episode where these two aliens come onto the Enterprise, and one of them is trying to capture the other. And they're both like half black and half white. Well, one of them is black on one side and white on the other, while the other one is the opposite. He's got black on that side, and he's got white on the other. And one of them is talking to Kirk and Spock about it, and they kind of look at each other, and Kirk's like, I fail to see the significance. They're obviously alluding to the racial issues of the time. It was genius, and it worked so well. And I just wish that subtlety wasn't so lost on Hollywood now, because this was exactly how you did this sort of thing. And it's timeless because of that. These messages were right, and they still hold up today. And it's nice to see, especially out of the 1960s, how this show was progressive. I know that word gets a bad rep nowadays, but it was progressive without being obnoxious about it. The characters are fantastic. You go to Star Trek for these characters. I love these characters. My girlfriend once asked me, do you like Kirk or Spock better? And I told her, I was like, well, not really either. For me, they're a duo, and I love this duo. For me, they just work as a duo. It's like J and K from Men in Black, or Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon. Like, they just work so well together. I love these characters. Chekhov was a great addition to the series when he came in season 2. Of course, McCoy is awesome. I love Uhura. These are just really awesome characters, and that's what you go to Star Trek for, is these amazing characters that you love so much. Kirk and Spock are going to transcend time forever. We all love Kirk and Spock. They're amazing. The casting was absolutely fantastic. Leonard Nimoy as Spock is perfect. Like, nobody ever thought he could be recasted, and then when they got Zachary Quinto to play Spock, that was a shock to everyone, because nobody thought that you could get somebody to play Spock. But Leonard Nimoy as Spock is like one of the best casting choices of all time. He absolutely knocked it out of the park. Playing a character that is absolutely emotionless is kind of hard, and he crushed it. Also, William Shatner as Captain Kirk, amazing. Like, this is the role he was born to play. I love Captain Kirk's facial expressions throughout the show. They really did a great job for 1960s acting, because, you know, acting since then has gotten a lot better. It's evolved since then. But these guys did a really, really good job for the time that they were acting in. I also love the relationships between these characters. Like I said, Kirk and Spock, they're just amazing. I love this friendship. And what's so great about Spock is that he's half human, half Vulcan. Now, for those of you who don't know, a Vulcan, you should, because you're watching this review. And if you haven't seen Star Trek, well, come on, man. Vulcans are a race that aren't incapable of feeling emotions, but they've evolved in a way where they're able to seriously repress them. Well, Spock is half human, which means he has this constant conflict within himself when it comes to his emotions. And that creates, for such an interesting character, that's such genius writing. The fact that they came up with this, they said, wait a minute, let's make him half human so that he has this constant eternal conflict, and he's not just this emotional character that nobody really feels a connection to. Genius. It's so good. And that relationship between him and Kirk is so special, especially in the episode where Spock thought he had to kill Kirk, and then it turns out that him and McCoy tricked him. And then when he sees that he's alive and he grabs his arms, he's like, Jim! And then he immediately like gets his composure back, because he's like, wait a minute, I'm showing emotion. I love that. It's just so amazing. It's such an iconic friendship. I also love the alien races in this show. This show is interesting because most of the alien races in this show look like humans, right? It's not like Star Wars, right? Where people just, with all the alien races, look so different. In Star Trek, they all look like people, but they have different things about them. Like, for example, Vulcans, they're different internally, their internal organs, but really the only difference you see on the outside is that their eyebrows stick up and their ears are pointed. That's about it. But these alien races have become so iconic. Vulcans are so iconic now. I mean, Klingons evolved since the show, because at the time it was really just white actors wearing blackface. That doesn't really hold up anymore. But they evolved since then, and they gave them like really cool like makeup and stuff, and now they're an iconic species. Romulans are also really cool. I love the alien races in this show. I love the space battles in this show. Sorry, I've been coughing like all year, and it's just never gonna stop. I love the space battles in this show. This show, I swear to God, like, so much of this had to have set up Star Wars. I love it when the Enterprise gets in these shootout matches with other ships, or they get in chasing matches, or it's like the Enterprise is in critical condition and they have to figure out their way out of this situation. And of course, Scotty's always there to fix everything. I love it. And yeah, that's Star Trek, man. Now let's talk about my cons. I do have a few cons with the show. For one thing, some of the plots are kind of like repeated. There's a lot of episodes that deal with diseases. with them like getting diseases. And I couldn't help but sit there and think, you know, this would be an issue a lot less if y'all would just put on spacesuits whenever you go somewhere you're not familiar with. There's also several episodes where there's a race of people or a colony that is oppressed by a machine overlord. Kirk and Spock have to find a way to destroy that overlord and free the people. There's several episodes with that same plot. Some episodes are definitely better than others. A lot of the actors have acknowledged this, that some of the episodes are like really corny and they don't really work. There's a few where I kind of felt that same way. And the special effects, of course, you know, they did the best they could for the 60s, but I watched it all on this DVD, and I think they went back and remastered it quite a bit for this. So my experience with them wasn't as bad as it might have been for people in the 60s. But yeah, a lot of it doesn't hold up, but it's okay. It's the 60s, you know. Star Trek is a show that transcends time, and since then, we've had so many Star Trek movies and other shows. Like, Star Trek, like, always knocks it out of the park when it comes to their shows. And Star Trek is here to stay. It disappeared for 10 years, it came back, and it hasn't left us since. And it's interesting when you ask people, hey, what's your favorite Star Trek show? People always have different answers. I've heard original series, I've heard Next Generation, I've heard Deep Space Nine, I've heard Star Trek Voyager. People have different opinions on what their favorite is. And it's because there's just so many good options with it now. And it's still running today. We've still got Star Trek shows running now. Like, that's crazy. So, like Star Trek is here to stay. It's not as popular as Star Wars is. It never was, it never will be. It's a lot harder to go to a store and find Star Trek toys when you can go to literally any Walmart or Target in the world and find a crap ton of Star Wars toys. But the impact it's had is truly remarkable. Like, it's crazy to think how different our pop culture would be if it wasn't for Star Trek. So, with all that being said, I'm going to give Star Trek, the original series, a 95 out of 100. All right. That's it. I'm thinking about doing some other reviews. Working on some notes. Don't know if they're coming at all or if they do when, but working on some other stuff right now. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Yeah. Me and you, man. Me and you. Right here, man. You touch my heart. Subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next video. But until then, live long and prosper. By the way, I'm sorry about my lighting. I'm using a lot of natural lighting. I have to figure out my lighting situation here. I'll figure it out. I know the lighting in this video isn't great, but I'll figure it out. Live long and prosper. Me and you.